Hey, you guys, Tim Willie is here. Personal brand building and working from home and
Struggled with wanting to go to work every day because it kind of sucked.
success stories of HBR students.
These people are asking like all these questions, and it feels like it's because they're trying to move forward.
Well, I didn't know you were getting into home-based business sales and marketing.
I was struggling to stay consistent with the things I needed to do.
People that are actually doing it and like seeing success and like it's just that's the difference.
So I knew at some point I was going to be an HBR. I just didn't know when.
These people are not going to be okay. Hey, you guys, I sometimes like to bring on students of mine in different programs just to help you understand what's real for you. As we look into, personal brand building and working from home and home-based businesses and thought leadership and all of that stuff, as we look into that world, there are many different people, coaching in it, mentoring in it, and that sort of thing. And that's great. It takes all types, right? It definitely takes all types. What I want you to know is I want you to know kind of what's happening in my world, like in the mentoring and the training and the coaching that's happening over in this, that my students call it the Marthaverse. I did not come up with that name, but that is what they say. And so I'm just going to reiterate it here in a weird way. But I just want you to see what's actually happening over here, or hear about what's happening over here, just so you understand what could potentially actually be real for you. So Tim Willie is here, and he is he's one of my students, but he's a breakaway student in the way that he implements, like that he really and Tim, thanks for coming on this morning, by the way. Tim's a busy dude, but he was able to come on today, and I appreciate you. There are all sorts of students in the world, and there are all sorts of types of students in the world. Tim is one of those students that he grabs on. It's like a pit bull, right? He grabs onto something that he sees for himself, and he will not let go until it's understood, until he gets it. And so that's the type of student he is. And if you're hearing this and you're like, that's how I am too, or if you're like, wait, I would like to be that way, just listen to what Tim's going to say. And there's probably, breadcrumbs, success leaves clues, right? There's probably some clues in how to be that way, but also know that he's already that way, and some programs didn't work for him before. So know that even if you're that way, that doesn't mean it means the program was a wrong fit. It wasn't you. You weren't the problem. Does that make sense? So now I want to kind of get into it. I just wanted to preface it. So Tim, what was life like before you jumped into HBR or home-based revolution? Like, what other stuff did you take? What did you try? What was life like?
Yeah. So I started this whole journey with working from home and stuff. Really kind of back in about 2016. I started trying to get into real estate investing, and for me at the time, I'd been working a regular job for about 7 years. Loved it, but some changes were starting to happen. So had a boss change, and things kind of went downhill, and it got really rough at work. And so for a year and a half, I actually struggled with wanting to go to work every day because it kind of sucked,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I started with real estate investing, and I paid a lot of money for several different courses and trainings and stuff, and
Those are
um,
expensive. Those
they
are,
are.
yeah.
And I learned things here and there, and I found ways to make things work. But I didn't really love any of the courses because I felt like they were all kind of missing stuff.
hmm
And then so after I'd been doing that for about 6 months or a year, kind of learning, I actually ended up losing my job. And so I cashed out my 401k, and I was like, we're gonna try and do this work for myself thing. And so I had two small kids, like 11 and 8, and a wife and a house, and it was like, okay, let's see if we can make this work. And we spent a year trying to do real estate investing, and kind of right about the time we ran out of money, we actually found a house and flipped it and made $67,000 on the deal. So I was able to go for another about 6 or 8 months.
Nice. Nice.
Um, yeah, so
Right when it needed to happen.
exactly.
There's something to that. I think a lot of us have those stories. I want to stop here for just a
Yeah.
second because a lot of us have those stories where I was losing everything. I was in free fall. I was scared to death. And then something happened that allowed me to be able to like continue up. And those of us, I know, Tim, I know that you're a believer as well. There are those of us that are believers that we're just like, but God, like there's just those moments where it's like we we are in a free fall, but then we're taken care of. Like grace meets us there, which is a really cool thing. I'm sorry, I just had to like note that,
No.
but go ahead.
Yeah, so that, allowed us for another 6 to 8 months to kind of do things. And again, from there I just was trying to learn other things because I was struggling to stay consistent with the things I needed to do in real estate investing. And most of the things I had learned kind of gave me an overview of here's kind of what to do, but not really how to do it. And I
Yeah,
feel like a lot of programs miss that. A lot of times they're like, here's like the big picture, here's kind of how things work, but
yeah,
what to do, but they don't give you like the day to day, right? And so
yep.
I ended up finding another real estate program that I really loved, that I'm trying to get an affiliate with, but they won't get back to me. So
Oh, come on. Good
so
grief.
I might have to make an actual phone call and be like, hey, what's up? So
Yeah, or shoot
um
me their information. I could reach out to them for you on your behalf if you want.
yeah. Yeah. So Um, and then, things kind of didn't go really well there. So I ended up having to go back to work for a couple of years, and then COVID hit and that kind of, messed up everyone's world. Um,
Yeah.
and then we ended up selling our house in California. We moved to Oregon and had a pretty good amount of cash. So I didn't have to get a job right away. And this was 3 years ago now. And just tried to find some other things that could work. So I started a construction company, and we started trying to do e-commerce and some other things like that. That just we found some good programs, but for me, they never really felt like quite the right fit, like what I really wanted to do. And
Yeah.
so I always struggled to stay consistent with it because um, it didn't really call to me, I guess is the way to put it, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of where it's at. I've done, like I said, real estate, e-commerce. I've done construction. I have all sorts of stuff. So
Love it. I love it. Because that's when you know it's out there and when you know it's possible, you will start to do all of the things in order to see which one clicks, right? Because I mean, there are people doing well in the world, right? And you're like, I know it's possible. Like, there's
ex-
no way that everyone's lying.
exactly. Yep.
Some people might be, but there's no way that everybody is. And
Yep.
and so when you see it, you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to try and I'm going to figure out which one is actually best for me. So, how did you come across HBR or home-based revolution in the first place? Do you remember?
Sort of. So somehow I started following you or seeing some of your stuff. I think it was probably because of your ties to Young Living.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because I'm in, we're in that world. My wife's actually Gary's her uncle.
Oh,
So
okay, cool.
yeah. So so we've been with
Got
Young
it.
Living for a long time. And so I think that's where I first kind of saw you, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. I saw you here and there, and then I started seeing some of your other programs, and I just kind of stalked you for like 2 years. Um, just kind of seeing what I could. And, there was a couple of different times I reached out and messaged you and was like, hey, I want to get in. And then it was just like, wouldn't work. The timing wasn't right, or I didn't have the money or whatever. And
Yeah.
um, so this last time it was actually another one of those kind of the world is falling apart things, like we were running out of money. My construction business that I've been doing for about 3 years, all the work kind of disappeared. I didn't have, I was kind of, everything was kind of, on this downward slide. And then you reached out and you're like, hey, we're going to do this thing where we actually walk you through it. And it starts in January. And it's like, you know what? I don't have the money. I don't know where it's going to come from, but I need to do that because I need to find something else
Yeah.
that's going to help. And so, in about the same time, I also started working full time again for somebody else, which I still kind of hate every day. Over the last 7 or 8 years, I've only spent about 2 years of that working for somebody else, and
Yeah.
so going back to that is really hard.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Um,
I joke around and say I'm unemployable at this point. Like I don't even know that so
it's
I understand.
yeah, it is. It's hard. Like I was actually surprised that I got offered the job because I kind of felt the same
Mm.
way. It's like, yeah, I know I have the skills, but it's like it's so hard to go back and work for somebody else again.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, so I
So,
jumped in
yeah.
and unfortunately I got started about 3 weeks late because there were some issues with payments and emails and stuff. And so I jumped in and about 3 weeks behind. And um, yeah, just that's kind of how I got into the program.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so for those of you that are listening and you're like, "What? Okay, so a live walkthrough and that's different. How?" So this program actually started in 2020. I think it was July or August of 2020. That's when the earlier, so like in, March, whenever we all know March 2020, don't we? That was the beginning of the big C. And I remember we were watching the news. My husband and I were watching the news because everybody was watching the news. We don't usually watch the news, but at that point we were, because we were like, what is going on right now? And all we saw were, companies closing their doors, like local mom and pop places shutting their doors because they couldn't have people couldn't come in, right? It was such a wild time. And then we saw big corporations actually starting to close down and lay off people. And a stat that we know to be true is that most Americans, anyway, unfortunately, don't have more than $200 extra in their bank account every month. And we know that stat. And so Mike and I, as these, family, we don't look at it as people losing their jobs. We look at it as families being impacted. Like that's just the filter that we look through, that we look at the world through. And whenever we saw everybody losing their jobs, we looked at each other and we're like, there's these people are not going to be okay. Like this isn't the what is going to happen to these people? Like there's no reason that the companies are going to continue to pay them. They don't have money coming in, like the families don't have money coming in, but the businesses don't have money coming in. Like this is a big problem, right? And um like I said, we looked at each other and we were like, we have to show people how to do what we're doing, because at that point we were already doing really, really well from home and just doing our thing that we teach in HBR. And we're like, we have to show people how to do this. And so HBR started in 2020. The way that we did it was really silly as I look back on it, because we did a live walkthrough the first time. So that first, 12 weeks, we walked everybody through it, and then we made it evergreen. And so for those of you listening or watching right now, what evergreen means is basically do it on your own. So the education, the stuff was there for you to do, but it was a do it on your own thing. Well, light bulb moment for me. The end of last year, I was like, wait, I went back through the stats of HBR students and the success stories of HBR students, and I saw a very clear difference between the ones that went through a live walkthrough and the ones that did it on their own, right? And this is for anybody. If you have to do something on your own, you're just probably not going to complete it. You're probably not going to go all the way through it because things come up. We have ADHD. We have it's just not the same as having the creator walk you through it, the creator of the program walk you through it and answer questions as you go and that sort of thing. So anyway, this last
Yeah.
January, I started the live walkthroughs again. So we do a 12-week walkthrough, and we've updated it to add a bunch of AI to help make things easier and blah, blah, blah. But with that walkthrough, it went right back to the very first time, where you have people that are actually doing it and like seeing success, and like it's just that's the difference. And so anyway, that whenever you went through, so when you started into, I know you started 3 weeks late, put my hands in air quotes because I hate to say late, but 3 weeks,
Well,
you just started 3 weeks in.
yeah.
Um, was there any moment, or what was the moment? I guess it probably was one. What was the moment where you're like, I think this might actually work?
Well, um, it's interesting because I actually almost joined when you very first did HBR back in 2020,
Oh my word.
and I couldn't like for whatever reason, like I think it was before we had sold our house and stuff, so we didn't have any money to jump in. But I was
Yeah.
like, dang, I really want to do that because it looks like kind of a combination of everything I've looked at and done, and
Yeah.
so I knew at some point I was going to be an HBR. I just didn't know when.
Hey.
And so one thing that I've learned in all the different programs I've done is that live coaching and the accountability it gives is crucial. And most other programs you have to pay extra for it. And
Yeah.
so when you came back and you were like, "Oh, HBR," and we're going to walk you through it, I was like, "Okay, I got to do it now,"
Yeah.
because I know that without that, like you're like you said, you don't do it. You have no accountability. There's nothing that makes you show up and do it every day.
Right.
And so, um, I started there, and your program starts with the big think, and that was, I've done a lot of stuff that kind of goes along those lines, but it was nice to kind of be again walked through it and kind of do
Yep.
this and do this and do this, and some of it's kind of, I don't want to say hard. It's um, trying to stay consistent and not feel like you're rushing through some of those things is
Yeah.
challenging. And then, setting your alarms 45 minutes comes really fast.
Yeah.
But I still have my alarms on my phone. I still do it most days, my
Love
45
it.
minute alarms. So, um, and then the just kind of the weekly follow up, which I've been bad the last couple of weeks. I haven't done my um, you know, evaluation at the end of the week and kind of reset everything. And so, but that's kind of really what started it is kind of, being able to implement a lot of those things that I've learned from other places and heard other places as well. And then kind of
Yeah.
pull it in and kind of, get my mind right. And then the biggest thing that really helped with HBR was the bat signal and helping me figure out where I wanted to focus. Because I feel like that's been the thing I'm lacking the most in all the things I've
Yeah.
tried is because I have all these different interests and it's like, okay, well, what should I focus on, right?
Yeah.
And so um, it was nice having the walkthrough because if I had done that on my own with just trying to watch the videos, I probably would have quit. I,
Yeah.
you know, because I couldn't figure it out. I was like, well, maybe it's this and maybe it's that. And so
Yep.
for those who don't know, I one of Martha's you don't call them coaches, strategists, is that what you
Income
call them?
strategist. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked with her, and I literally would while I was driving to work in the morning, I would record my thoughts in answer to her emails, and I would send her like 30-minute voice recordings that she actually went through and like made notes and then like sent me stuff back. And so we did this for probably like 2 weeks. And then finally kind of nailed down my bat signal and the focus and stuff. And it was kind of like, okay, this actually finally feels good. Like this feels like I actually have a place to focus, and then I can start working from there. So
That's so perfect. That's, I think that's our secret sauce. I think our secret sauce is, well, it's bat signal to begin with, just so people understand you're talking to a person and like, here's the type of, like, here's what you're actually doing this for. So many places are just like, just kind of, scattershot it into the world and hopefully somebody's gonna, resonate with it. But you have to be more intentional than that. And also, I mean, we as human beings have to have contribution is a big deal for us. We don't realize it until we do it, but contribution is a really big deal. And so whenever we determine our bat signal and we start to give back, that contribution piece actually feeds our soul. It's a thing that people don't realize, but you probably didn't know you were getting into home-based business sales and marketing to be able to contribute to the world to like to help your soul, right? But it's totally a thing. But um not just our bat signal, but then also our strategists and the way that like for those of you that are listening, we do 3 coachings at least. There's more, but we do at least, or I do at least 3 different coachings every week. So I show up on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for questions, like to be able to answer in that setting. But in the off times, my strategists show up on some different calls. But then also, what Tim's talking about right now, you can email them, you can message them, and be able to work out things that you're working through. And so at the beginning of this, I mentioned how Tim clamped on like a pit bull, right? And was going to make sure that he had it. That was him and his strategist just kind of like making sure that he had what he needed. And then so Tim, whenever you realized you had what you needed, did you feel like it was so much easier at that point? It kind of sounded like you were saying that, like it was easier at that point to actually step into all of the doing of the stuff.
Yeah. So, two things about. So I have done some other programs that tried to focus on, finding your avatar or your bat signal.
Uh-huh.
But again, it was kind of, do your self-paced thing, and they didn't help you focus on it the same way that you do.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of fight with myself doing HBR because I was like, I'm already behind, and this is taking a really long time because it's only supposed to take a week to get this down. But I was like, it doesn't make any sense to me to move forward until I
Right.
have this in place, because if I don't know what this is, then it doesn't make any sense to even listen to any of the other videos or anything, because I'm just going to get lost.
You're right.
And so I was
Huh?
like, I need to get this figured out first. And so that's why I took the time. And like I said, I have a 45-minute commute every morning. And so I would literally like record myself answering Danelle's questions and stuff, like the whole drive to work. And then I would send it to her, like, hey, sorry for the long message here, but here you go. And then she would listen to it and reply like by the end of the day or the next day or whatever, and so
Yeah.
but we finally figured it out. And then I don't get to do a lot of the live stuff that you do because it doesn't work out time wise with the time change or the time zone differences and everything. But I could go back and listen to a lot of the videos, and I'm like, these people are asking like all these questions, and it feels like it's because they're trying to move forward before they figure out this first part. And once I figured out that first part, for me, it was like, okay, now let's do your tagline or your group name. And it was like, I mean, like literally, like I think about it for like 15 minutes, and it was like, oh, it just kind of like clicked.
Yeah.
And so, and it still took some refining, but like that initial, I think this is kind of what it is, just came so much easier.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. I can't wait for people to listen to this. And then also something else that we added in this HBR round is we added the blueprints, right? And this is where we do like a 40 to 60 page, depending on, the person, uh a blueprint of who your person is and what they're looking for, and like a year of content for them and courses that they're looking for and that sort of thing. So not only do you determine who your bat signal is, but then we make a full on report of who that person is. And so, and a lot of times people will realize, because your bat signal person is a version of you in the past, right? But there's an interesting thing with us and things that we've gone through. We tend to romanticize them whenever we're further out, and we don't remember it exactly as it was, right? We remember it a little bit better than it was. And so whenever we do the blueprint for you, we actually are showing you pain points and things that they're feeling and fears and things like that are going on in this person's mind. And as people are like reading through their blueprints of who their people are, like I it does not surprise me at all to get messages from folks saying like they're bawling while they're reading it. And this does not sound good at all. Like if you're watching this, or listening to this, you're like, well, I don't really want to cry about anything, Martha. But here's the deal is, when you can connect with that person that you're serving in that way and remember exactly what you went through, uh, you can serve them in a way that nobody else. Oh my gosh, I just did thumbs up. You can serve them in a way that nobody else can serve them. You can care for them in a way that nobody else can, because you're aware. You're aware of what their needs are, and you were there before, and you're actually remembering it, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
that's just another thing that we added in for you guys for HBR. But
Yeah.
what do you think, Tim, like moving forward? So you're in HBR, and of course when you're in HBR, you've got HBR for life. So you've got the coaching for life, you've got the, you can keep going through it for life. Like we're family in there. Um what are you excited about for the future?
Um, that's a good question. So if I can, I want to talk about the blueprint a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So honestly, that was one of the things that kind of tipped me over with the new version that you did
Yeah,
was you included all this other stuff like, hey, it's personal bat signal coaching, and we're going to give you the year of content. And you get this blueprint, and I was like, okay, that I need that
yeah.
because I don't like social media. I'm really bad at it. I am. That's, I mean, let's just be honest. Like I don't share on social media. I don't. And so
Yeah,
I was like, I know that's going to be one of the hardest parts for me is figuring out how to do all this stuff online and come up with the content and stuff. And when I got my blueprint, I cried. I'll admit it. Like it because I could remember, what it was like to be there. But also I felt like I'm still a little bit there, and so
yeah.
it did. I really connected with it, and I was like, man, this is exactly how I feel and how I felt, and I know exactly, what that's like, and I know there's other people out there who feel that same way. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that was huge. I'm excited for the future, to start going through the modules again here next week, right?
Yep.
Well, depending on
Yep.
depending on when people hear this,
Yep.
beginning of
Yep. Yep.
May.
Yeah, May 6th is when the next one starts for sure.
Yeah. Because I want to actually be able to go through it now, kind of live, right? Because like I said, I was behind the whole time last time, and so I kind of got bogged down in a few spots. I started doing some of the things, but because I always kind of felt like I was behind, it was kind of tough to stay with it. So I kind of started some of the different things, but it's like I never quite finished some of them. And so that's what I'm excited for these next 12 weeks, kind of going through it again, is to be like, okay, I've got the website purchased, but I never finished setting it up. I've got the Facebook group created, but I don't have anything in it, and so I've got like all this stuff that's kind of got started. And now I'm ready, and excited to be able to kind of fill that in and actually be able to, start reaching out and working this plan that all kind of started back in January.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's why we give you guys access for life, because how many times have you been through something? You know that there's a time constraint on it, right? You know you only go through it this one time and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I have to do it." There's so much stress and anxiety involved in that. And quite frankly, there's so much stress and anxiety with just changing your life in the first place that you don't need the additional stress and anxiety of going through, quite frankly, like a master's degree in home-based business. Like it's really everything. And so you don't need, to be like, okay, it all has to be perfect in 12 weeks because then it goes away, right? Like it's
Yeah,
not a going away thing. It's like you're going to do it and then you're going to redo it and then you're going to
yeah,
redo it and you're going to redo it. And quite frankly, even in my own business, I redo stuff all the time. Like I'm rebuilding my website right now because I've changed and the website has not been changed in, 2 to 3 years at this point. And I'm like, well, I'm going to rebuild my website now. And so like we're always going to be redoing things. There will never be a set it and forget it. Not really. There shouldn't be. We should always be growing and evolving and also growing and evolving for our people, if that makes sense. And so this is all just perfect. It's perfect. So what would you say to somebody who maybe they're just now hearing about HBR, or they had heard about it before, but they're on the fence and they're like, is it just another one of those things that isn't really going to work for me? Like, what would you say to somebody that's on the fence?
um, are you committed to it? Because it really, that's the biggest thing about all these programs. Is I hate looking back at something that I've went through and people are like, oh, it's just a scam. I'm like, no, it's not. Most of them aren't.
Yeah,
It's you didn't do the work,
yeah,
and so that's really what it comes down to is, are you willing to put in the work to make it work? And
yeah,
if not, then save your money, go do something else. Don't give someone a bad name because you're going to buy a program and then not do the process and then badmouth them afterwards,
Right. Right.
So that, I mean, that's my advice, is if you're willing to put in the work, then do it because it will work. But
Yeah.
if you're not going to put in the work, then save your money and save everyone else, the
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 headache.
heartache and yeah, the headache and the backlash and the bad mouthing,
Yeah.
yeah, keep all that to
Yeah.
yourself. Go figure something else out. Go get a job or whatever.
Yep.
But yeah, if you're willing to put in the time and do it, then it'll absolutely work.
I love it. I love it. Well, again, thank you, Tim. I appreciate you coming on and just sharing this with us. I know you've got a place to go here in just a minute. And then, folks, if you're wanting to jump into HBR, you just shoot me a message, shoot me an email. My contact info is either in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be in the, um, uh, not the comment section. What is that? The
Description.
description. Thank you. I'm like, wait, my brain is fried. Didn't think I was going to talk about YouTube today. So, anywho, everybody have the best day. I will see you later. Adios.